Today, I'm excited to interview a good friend to hear a story of being in the entertainment business and building wealth through multifamily real estate investments and other investments. Will probably be one of the most interesting interviews yet. Barri Griffiths coming up.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing Podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and to reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now, your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome back to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing Show. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke. And today we have Barri Griffiths. He is a multifamily real estate investor and host of the WWRE Podcast. Barri, how you doing, my friend? And thank you for joining us on the show.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure and honor to be on the show, man. I'm very excited, and I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, man. You set me up to fail now. Everyone's going to be expecting too much from me, so.
No. I gotta say it to you because when I was on your show, and a pleasure for having the introduction to going on your show, a couple weeks ago, you had such energy. I was trying my best to match it. So the only thing I could do was put together this very fancy introduction reel that I, put together. So I appreciate it again, my friend. Really look forward to it. I've been following you for quite a long while. Very, very interesting background. We'll of course get into that and like stuff that you're working on now and stuff. But for the people who are not familiar with you, can you kind of talk about your background story, how you got into real estate, as well as your current focus?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks again, man. Anytime I get to talk to you, it's fun. With a good connection, and I'm glad we were able to make this happen. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Wales in the UK. Hopefully I still have somewhat of an accent. I've been over here 11 years now, but I grew up in a tiny little town. It was probably about 200 people that lived in this town. And there was a fish and chip, just to give you an idea of what the place was like. It was a fish and chip shop. There was a tiny little grocery store. There was a post office. And then there was 3 pubs.
Oh, wow.
So, tells you a little bit about the Welsh right there. But I grew up in this town, and sort of from an early age, I don't know what it was, but I could always remember wanting more than what this place had to offer. And it's a great place, fantastic people, beautiful landscape there, rolling hillside, mountains, greenery. It's really beautiful there, and some fantastic people. And that's where my friends and my family is, and that's where my heart is, right? I'll always be a Welsh boy at heart. But I always wanted more, and I didn't necessarily know what that was, but I knew I was kind of searching for it always growing up. And that, I was a sports person growing up. I was crazy about sports, and through lifting weights and getting in shape, kind of led me to wrestling through a bit of luck and sort of me seeking something else. I started wrestling in the UK, and the UK scene is nothing like the US. It's completely different. You're wrestling in front of 100, 200, 300 people at most usually, as opposed to big arenas and lights and TV and everything here. But started out doing that and did a bit of that. Got onto the UK version of Gladiators. I know you had the US Gladiators. Yeah, I was Gladiator Goliath. I did that for a season, and then got a contract with the WWE signed it in 2009, but moved out to Tampa in 2010. So here's a small town boy living in a town of 200 people. Go to Tampa, Florida, right? And my eyes just lit up, right? The first time I went to that beach, and beautiful sand, beautiful water, beautiful. I'm married, but you can kind of guess, right? And my eyes just lit up, and I was just like, wow, this is just amazing. And this is just, it's kind of felt like where I was meant to be, right? And I fell in love with everything there. And I wrestled with WWE for about 4 years, did some cool stuff, pay-per-views, traveled the world, wrestled some of the biggest names like John Cena, Randy Orton, Kane, some of those big names. And then in 2014, unexpectedly to me, they didn't renew my contract, and it kind of came out of nowhere. Because in my head, I always thought that I was going to be the world heavyweight champion. It wasn't an arrogant thing. It wasn't like, hey, look at me, I'm going to be the world heavyweight champion. I didn't really tell it to many people, but inside, because I was working hard and I had a trajectory at one point that was kind of heading that direction, I thought that was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I go from thinking I'm going to be the world heavyweight champion to nothing. I'm in another country. I don't have too much of a skill set outside of being a wrestler, and that's a skill set in itself, right? It took me years to kind of get there and train and dedicate my life to that. But that doesn't really necessarily pay the bills if you're not working for the WWE, right? There's not so many other companies you can go work for, and the independent scene isn't a great place to make money either. So in January of 2014 as well, just to give you an idea, I bought my first ever house. And I was working for the WWE, making more than six figures, and thinking, okay, I can buy this $435,000 home, no problem. And I can afford this $2,550 a month, $2,550 mortgage payment a month. That's not an issue, right? What's the big deal, right? I'm going to be the world heavyweight champion. I'm making great money now. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Well, fast forward April of that year, they didn't renew my contract. And now, it's just me and my wife, and she was fresh out of college, so she didn't have any job or anything at that time. And it was like, well, what do I do from here? I just bought this house that I love. I've lost what I thought was going to be my career for the rest of my life and was going to set me up. I've lost that. I can't sell this house. I don't have a choice about my career. That was taken away from me. But this house, I need to keep a hold of it. It's just psychologically for me, if nothing else. If not financially, if nothing else, I just need to keep a hold of this house. So what did that mean? It meant renting that place out. So it led me down, to finding out, how do you find a tenant? How do you screen a tenant? All these best practices and whatnot. And I think through Googling that led me to Bigger Pockets. I think like a lot of people, right? Found the whole world of Bigger Pockets, amazing. And then Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and just fell in love with real estate from there, just because I think at that point I was looking for something, right? Maybe if I'd found this Bigger Pockets 3 or 4 years earlier, Rich Dad, Poor Dad 3 or 4 years earlier, I would have read it and be like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. There's a guy that has a Rich Dad and Poor Dad and Bigger Pockets. Oh, okay. But I was looking for something at that point because I realized I needed a plan B. I needed something else in my life. I was still looking to continue my career and pursue wrestling and entertainment. And that's fast forward how I ended up working for Cirque du Soleil out here in Las Vegas. So this is where I live. I moved out here in 2015. But I found a tenant, put a tenant in there, and we self-managed it. And that was kind of somewhat of a proof of concept and somewhat that knowledge that we can do it. And then also along with all that education that I was giving myself through Bigger Pockets, through reading books, through talking to people, really wanted to get into real estate. And then in 2016, I bought my first real investment property, even though I became an accidental landlord on that first one. I bought a townhome here in Las Vegas, 20% down, bought it through the MLS. The cash flow $200 or $300 a month, but it was again that proof of concept that I can do it. Nothing, the sky didn't fall. I didn't lose my shirt. I'm still alive. I didn't kill anyone. Like all of that good stuff, right? And I was working with Cirque du Soleil at the same time, and with everything they tell you, like start with the end in mind, right? What is your goal? What is your why? What is it? All that stuff. And my why was to create financial freedom for myself and to have that. Not have that stress that I had, when WWE didn't renew my contract, and that was kind of my goal. What did that look like? That looked like $100,000 a year, because that's what I was working with WWE, a little bit more. And what did that look like? It looked like 40 single family homes, right? That's what because I didn't know any better at the time. Even though I was educating myself through Bigger Pockets, all I really kind of understood was to buy rental properties, you put 20% down, or you can buy an owner occupied for 3.5%, 5% down, whatever you go with. So I was thinking 4 houses a year, 10 years time frame, gets me to 40 houses. What is the average price in Vegas now? Okay, how much is that? How much down payment do I need? So I was trying to figure out every last penny that I need, trying to encourage my wife to maybe increase her income as well and save every last penny. And I was like, man, this is going to be tough. It's going to take a lot. But I was still dedicated and I was still up for the challenge. But then I met with someone one day, and this is the great thing about networking and we're talking with people and being out there. I spoke with a guy one day, and I remember exactly where I was sitting, exactly what I was doing, because it kind of, I don't want to say it was a life-changing moment, but it was such an aha moment in my head where the light bulb went off massively when he said, hey, yeah, that's a cool goal, 40 single-family homes in 10 years. I think it's very doable. You might have to change a few things around, but you realize you can actually buy a 40-unit apartment complex in one deal. And he kind of it was almost like a mic drop. You get a mic drop and go, whoa. Wait, what? A 40, these massive 40, and massive 40 units was massive at the time. It was like a 400 unit to me now. You know what I mean? It's like, what? You don't mean all these big institutions don't buy these 40? You know what I mean? All this thing. And then, so he educated me a little bit, and he told me to listen to some podcasts, and then I listened to those from start to finish, twice over, and I was like, wow. And I obviously then learned about, not only could I get there quicker because you can buy 40 units in one deal, but there's so many more benefits to multifamily investing So by this point, I had 3 single-family homes. I bought an owner-occupied property that I was going to turn into a rental, and I was like, hey, the Vegas market has appreciated, the Florida market has appreciated a bit. Let me take these chips off the table, and I know I want to be in multifamily. So let me take that off the table and look to invest in multifamily. So that's kind of what I did. I sold all those. And then during that time, I was sitting on quite a bit of money. And I say one of the biggest mistakes I made looking back was waiting. I don't think it was necessarily analysis paralysis. Maybe it was, but I thought there was maybe going to be a crash in the market. There was going to be a downturn. This is the problem when you listen to too much stuff sometimes, right? You got to listen to stuff, but you need the yin and the yang, and you need both sides. And I was listening to too much of the pessimistic stuff and not enough of the optimistic stuff, right? And they always say, actually, you've got to realize, are you a pessimist? Are you an optimist? What are you? And listen to the opposite more of what you're at. So I should have listened to more pessimistic stuff and Tony Pizza Shift or someone like that, right? When the sky's falling every single day and the recession is happening every other day. But I waited and I was sitting on some money, and so I was like, all right, my friend said, hey, you're interested in doing a private money loan? They'll give you 12% and 3 points up front. I was like, that's more than I'm getting in the bank, and I'm not doing anything with this money. So I did that, and that turned out to be pretty good deal. There was some twists and turns in that. I can elaborate on that a little later if you want. But I had that, and then in 2020, so January of last year, I bought a 6 unit. I was looking for something like around 20 unit, but my friend it was a broker, bought me a 6 unit, and it was like more of a flip type deal. And crazily enough, I bought it for like 300, and we're under contract now for I'll say 750 because the deal hasn't gone through yet. But yeah, I'm under contract for 750, which is crazy because this is it. Yeah. And actually, the property is not in Las Vegas or in Florida, which is a highly appreciated market. It's just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. It's actually in Kentucky, a place called Covington, which is just south of the river by Cincinnati there. So that in a year, that property appreciated out. Now I put about 100 grand into it and did a lot of stuff with it, but I'm all in for 400. I'm hopefully selling, for 750. So pretty crazy deal. So I'm going to
definitely
1031 that into hopefully 50 to 60 units, either in Cincinnati again or north of that in an area called Dayton, where there's a lot more for cash flow. And kind of if I can get a 15, 17, 18% cash on cash, which is high, I know, but in Dayton it's a lot more doable.
It's very cash flow.
I'm kind of close to my freedom number, so it just goes to show how quickly this can happen to you. And then at the same time as well, I partnered with some guys, and we're looking at some syndication deals. We made some offers. We're looking, mainly in the Carolinas. We made an offer on a 64 unit, a 66 unit. And still actively looking at deals, and also I'm looking in the Vegas market as well as part of that partnership to take down some syndication deals as well. So very long story, my bad, man. I talked too much. Once I start, I don't know where to stop. But yeah, that's me kind of in not a nutshell, a big nutshell, I guess, a few nutshells.
No, that was great because, like I said, it kind of transitioned to a lot of, like, we can cover so much stuff now. It's just very inspirational, your story. Because, there's like a lot of people where, they're into like a career or a field that they love. And then, if it's through the pandemic or something happened and it just didn't work out as planned, and you moving here into this country, leaving your family and kind of starting new, and then kind of have things alter like that. But then you adjusted. And you also mentioned something that was very interesting, is that if you had found bigger pockets a couple years earlier, that you may have just maybe dismissed it. Maybe you were in a totally different field, but maybe everything worked out as the way it's supposed to be. Like you just kind of had this was part of your life's journey. So I think that's very definitely inspiring. And also you brought up the kind of importance of, networking and education and constantly just pushing yourself. You being an athlete and being a competitive nature, you just like push yourself to in order to get more. So I appreciate you sharing that. And as far as kind of like you had mentioned, going into different markets, I know that you educate yourself to, now having a lot of experience from single family to some small multifamily. The fact that to see what's a good deal, like as far as analysis. I know Dayton, Cincinnati, there's a very strong cash flowing markets. Can you kind of take us through your thought process on how you analyze a deal, and then how you kind of look at markets to kind of weigh in what type of investment that you want to get into?
Yeah, well, early on, I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest with you. And it was like a lot of people, I guess, right? And that was another reason why I kind of took a step back. So in around 2017, 2018, I was looking at properties here in Vegas. I was looking, properties around 1.5, 2 million, something like that. And I was looking to syndicate those, or to bring someone on and raise some money for something like that. Because at the time, I still owned all my property, so I didn't have any much cash to play with. But through looking at these properties and meeting with these brokers, I was like, wait, we're getting kind of close now to making an offer. I don't really know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Right? So I took a step back from that, and that was another reason why I kind of waited a little bit longer. But I joined a mentorship program. So I joined Joe Fearless's. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Joe, but he's very successful. But I joined his mentorship program so that I could get educated, and so that I could, use his expertise, use his experience, use his knowledge, and kind of get there quicker, and also just have someone looking over my shoulder. I wanted someone, sort of some hand holding essentially. And the reason I went with him was that he has unlimited access to himself. So I saw some other courses, but I was like, you get a monthly call with 10 other people. Like, I don't get to ask the questions I want. I might get 30 seconds to ask one question or something. Mm-hmm. So I went with Joe with that. So that was a big part of me getting educated and kind of understanding. And, I understood the terminology and the basics of multifamily, but, diving deeper into the underwriting and, analyzing markets. So what happened was, as I mentioned, I was looking in Las Vegas, but Vegas was just getting more and more competitive at the time, and Vegas is a boom and bust town, right? When it goes up, it's great, and right now it's going up, right? But you catch the other side of that, and it doesn't come down slowly, right? It kind of dives down, right? Usually, now what's going to happen next, nobody knows. But so I was like, I don't really like that. This is, if I'm going to be buying for myself, I'm looking more long term, looking for more stability. And I was telling my coach Joe Phillips this, and I said, I thought about maybe investing in the Midwest. And he's like, wow, really? Well, I actually live in Cincinnati, so that's where Joe is from, even though he mainly invests in sort of Florida or Texas is a big one for him. That's where he's done a lot. He's like, well, if you're looking anywhere, have you looked into Cincinnati? I live here. It seems like a pretty solid market. So that's essentially how I initially came across Cincinnati. But then, of course, I dived into population growth, job diversity. It doesn't have a huge amount of population growth and job growth, but it's stable. It's pretty stable. It doesn't lose. It goes slightly up. And so you have that stability, right? So it's not like a Phoenix. It's not like an Atlanta. It's not like a Tampa, right? It's those high appreciating areas, but you kind of know what you're going to get. Even during recessions, the dip isn't big. Right? It's a slight dip. And going back to when I learned about multifamily and realizing that you control the value of the property, essentially. So for anyone who doesn't know, if you control the NOI, the net operating income, if you increase the income, lower the expenses, you're essentially increasing the value of the property, regardless of what else is going on. So if I can pick a market where there's stability in the market, if I can make it spike, the NOI spike, well, I'm in a lot more control, and I like that. And I also was looking for a little bit more cash flow. So, Cincinnati has that. It has good job diversity. It has 7 of the Fortune 500 companies. He has Kroger there, has an Amazon hub, where they fly a bunch of stuff around. They have a lot of healthcare jobs there. So I don't want to talk too much about Cincinnati because I don't want so many people moving there. create more competition for myself. Anytime I hear anyone on Bigger Pockets or something like that talk about Cincinnati, I'm like, shut up, stop talking about it. But it's not so well hidden anymore. But because of that, I went there and I flew there a few times, got to know the city, got to meet brokers, and that was an important part for me. I think for anyone like looking to go to a different market, I think it's so important to go and meet these people. I'm actually expanding into the Dayton area there because I'm looking for a little bit more cash flow now. But I was calling people this morning, and it's not the same. I can make a good connection over the phone, but you have that eyeball to eyeball meeting, right? You face-to-face meeting. It's way different, right? Even if you can't shake hands, even if you can't get close because of the pandemic, it's way different. Because one, they're going to take you more seriously, right?
Exactly.
Some guy on the phone out of Las Vegas, okay, yeah, he's going to buy. How many times have I heard that, right? This guy from Las Vegas that's meeting me for dinner or for lunch or for breakfast, buying me food, right, or whatever. And it's way different, way different. So that's
100%.
That's one of the best things I think I did initially, was fly out there, get to know the city as well. And it's really hard to get to know a city in a short amount of time, but try to drive around a little bit just to familiarize myself. But more than anything, I met with property managers, met with brokers. Did I meet with, maybe I met with lenders as well. But, I tried to look at a few deals.
Make the most out of it.
Yeah, and I did that a couple of times before I started, really kind of making offers, and then started making offers, and then just completely out of the blue, that's how the 6 unit came up one day. And then I think you asked about analyzing deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I kind of had an understanding, but now looking back, I didn't. But luckily, so I'll just use the 6 unit as an example. Literally all the analysis I did initially on that one was the broker called me up and said, hey, there's this deal. It's listed at 300. It was a 6 unit. There's another 6 unit just down the street in a slightly worse area that's going to be listed at 500. It's like, okay, do you have any pictures of this property? Send me the pictures. Like, oh, it's kind of rough. Okay, let's ballpark 100 grand to fix it up, because it's only 6 units, right? Unless something really goes bad. So I'm all in for 400, and I can sell for 500. Okay, let's do it, right? Because it wasn't a 50 unit property or whatever, anything like that. And then of course I try to calculate, and he gave me a rough idea of what rents would be, and I tried, kind of did that. And then I did my own research of what rents would be, and then kind of try to calculate a little bit in terms of, and I probably used like the 50% rule and stuff like that, which
that's good.
Back. I'm not a big fan of that now, because 50% rule can be tough sometimes, because if your rents are low or if your rents are high, if you just use that 50% rule, it could be the same property. If you take rents from $1,000 a unit to $2,000 a unit, your expenses don't double, right? But, if you use that 50% rule, it kind of does, right? And it just, so that was one thing I learned, was it's better to, if you're going to do it, as a high level, it's okay. But if a property works out, you obviously need to go line item by line item. And that's something I've learned since a lot more, really worked on understanding how to analyze a deal, how to analyze an area as well. I didn't really analyze the area too much in terms of like, what was the crime like what was, what are the jobs in the area? What are, all that kind of good stuff, what is it? What are the jobs, that are there, all that stuff. So love that since, but it can't, luckily it worked out. Hopefully if everything goes as it should. We haven't closed yet, so we'll see.
Well, it's good. Like I said, it's good because you had that experience kind of coming into it. You also, finding out new things because it's a different market. Plus, you also have the support of your coach, and you can probably, run things by him. And just like I said, you already had kind of that experience coming in, and so you can kind of get a little bit better feel. And then eventually, like I said, just getting it done, and then moving on to that, like I said, that 50 unit or even a 400 unit, the next biggest project.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
absolutely
awesome. And one thing that I'm very impressed about you is that, and kind of talking about mentioning networking, is through kind of your podcast, building your brand. And I love the podcast because I was able to meet you and other like-minded investors, that not only is a great networking tool, it's learn about each other's businesses, but then I'm learning so much on the fly. So if I don't know much about Cincinnati, I can give you a call and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or I can call this guy, he's down in Colorado or Tampa or wherever it is. And you just kind of building that huge network, especially now where COVID kind of gave this, this kind of, not really asked for opportunity that we can able kind of expand ourselves. So that's pretty cool. Can you kind of talk about your show, like, what people can learn from them? Any interesting guests that you had on that was a big highlight for you?
Yeah, well, there was this guy called Dwaine Clarke. He was pretty amazing. He was probably my favorite guest so far. But but you're 100%, and you were a great guest, by the way. But you're 100% right. Like, this podcast thing has been amazing. I started last August, and I'm at 180, 170. I do a daily podcast, as crazy as that sounds. But I haven't been working, right? I was working for Las Vegas, for Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas. And we stopped working March 9th, I think was the last day we worked, and we haven't worked since. So it freed up all this time for me. So I've used this time to really dive into podcasting, because before I always wanted to start, and I was like, oh, I don't have time, blah, 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 blah. It was always an excuse. But when the pandemic hit, I had, there was no excuse. So that was a very positive thing from it that came. And podcasting is just, phenomenal, as you know, right? Because for one, like you said, you're getting to talk to people about their business, about what they're doing. You don't always interview people about everything that you're doing, so you learn about different stuff, and different stuff can trigger different stuff in your brain, and you're just constantly learning. Every time I'm on a podcast with someone, I learn something different every single time, right? So that's 180 different things that I've learned just from the podcast, and then that's also 180 different connections, like you said, right? You talk to someone for half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, and you get to know that person and you get a great relationship. And what it is as well is, and I think this has been spoken about quite a bit, so sorry if I'm repeating, but people will give you access to themselves that normally wouldn't, right? If I call up, I don't know, Dwaine Clarke, he's probably too busy to speak to Barri Griffiths, but if I ask him to have him on my podcast, well, it's a different thing, right? Because he gets to promote himself, he gets to promote his product, gets to promote whatever he has going on, and everyone's favorite subject is themselves, right? 9 times out of 10, right? Nobody doesn't necessarily like to talk about themselves too much. So it's that, and it's building, like you said, building a community, having people listen. And the cool thing to me, one of the biggest things that I wanted when I started out was what I realized is that being mad about real estate, when you talk about people in your circle that are not in real estate, they're so clueless to what's going on, and it's not their fault. They just haven't been educated, right? It's not like I'm anything special. It's just that I've spent time educating myself, fell in love with it, I'm obsessed with it. But to them, they're like, "Oh, you're in real estate, so are you an agent?" "No, I'm not an agent." "Oh, so you flip then?" "No." "Oh, so what do you do then?" Right? And I was like, wow, okay, there's really a need. As much as many podcasts as there is out there, and there's tons,
exactly,
and some great ones. You always think, is it too saturated? Is it too many people doing? No, absolutely not, because there's so many people out there who've never heard of a real estate podcast. So I was like, let me just try and touch the people around me and kind of educate them and kind of let them know what's available. Because, like going back to what I said about me, if Bigger Pockets and Rich Dad Poor Dad reached me at the right time in my life, I think that's important for so many people, right? I've had friends and family that I'm trying my best to grab them and bring them into real estate because I think it's the best tool to create wealth and financial freedom for you and your family. And, it's just amazing. And I'm like talking about it, and I'm like, and I'll send them all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, listen to this podcast, blah, blah, blah. And then a few days later, I'm like, hey, did you listen or did you read? "Oh, no, sorry, I'll get to it." And then a week later, hey, did you listen or read? No, not yet. And I'm like, okay, it can get frustrating, but I think you just got to understand that it's got to get to them at the right point. So through doing a podcast, that material is always going to be there. They're going to know it, and maybe at some point it'll reach them, and it can literally, like it did to me, change their life.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, just totally agree. And that's why we really connect. And I love like when you do your show, you just got so much energy, and like it's fun. And then you kind of mix in like, your personal life of, wrestling and Cirque du Soleil and family and life and business. And that's what real people do. They're not just the technical stuff. Like they talk about everything that's, that's fun and entertaining for them, because then they can have a connection point with those people. And if you catch them at the right time, maybe it wasn't, when you said, hey, did you listen to that podcast? Maybe it's a year later when maybe their career got cut short for whatever reason, and they're looking for an anchor. They say, I need to learn something. Oh, Barri is talking about this show. Let me go listen to it. Then they turn in and get in love, and that's like when they really need it in their point of life. So that's awesome to hear. I really appreciate that. And for all of my guests, I always ask, because like I said, it's also a selfish part of me, because I'm always learning new tips and tricks about my guests, is what's like a typical work day for you, and do you have any particular special morning routines?
Yeah, I'm sure you probably know this as well, right? Being a real estate investor, there is no typical day, right? What I mean?
Yeah.
And it's only recently I'd say I'd consider myself more of a full-time investor. So I'll try and put together somewhat of an average day. So I do a daily podcast. So I usually from 12 till 5, I schedule my afternoon out with my scheduling app. I leave my afternoon open. So usually I'll have 3 or 4, maybe 5 interviews in the afternoon. So from like 12 till 5, I'll be doing interviews. And then in the morning, because I invest in Cincinnati, I feel like I'm playing catch up because I'm 3 hours behind. So even, I've got an 18-month-old son. So I've got a very expensive alarm clock that is very consistent and that you can't throw against the wall as much as you want to shut it up. So he usually wakes me up around 6:30 every morning. And so I groggily get out of bed and drink some coffee. And usually I try and start the day by doing the easy stuff first for me. And this is what I found works best. So it's somewhat of a morning routine, somewhat of a hack. But some people, they always say start with the hardest thing and then everything becomes easy, right? What I found for me personally, and everyone's different, is if I start with the hard stuff first, I just put it off. I just I'm not feeling it, I'm sleepy, I'm blah, 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 and then I'll do it later, and then I don't end up doing it, and then I don't do anything. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I start with the easy stuff, which is usually some kind of text or some kind of email, so I'll drink my coffee and I'll be sending some people some text and some email, and then that starts the ball rolling a lot of times as well. Which then I'll get on my computer, maybe analyze a deal, maybe do whatever I need to do something with the taxes, reach out to the contractor, and even though this 6 unit is only 6 units, I've renovated every single unit, and it's been, a lot of work on that. So it's every day pretty much I'm reaching out to the property manager about something, rents, or how are we going to market this unit, reaching out to the contractor, hey, what's going on there today? Is everything going okay? Do you need anything from me? Blah, 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 blah. So that's usually how I start, because that's easy, right? You just text, right, for me. And I found that really helps, and it gets the ball rolling, and then something else will come up that I need to take care of from that, and then I'll do that. And then from there, I might call some brokers, look for some deals, call my partners, reach out to whoever, new property managers, whatever that needs to be done. And it just starts that ball rolling. And plus I'm playing catch up as well, it's important that I start pretty early from there as well, because at 2 p.m. my time, everyone stopped working pretty much in Cincinnati, right?
Exactly.
It's 5 p.m. there.
Yeah.
And then usually I start my interviews at around 12 anyway. So do my interviews. And then once I've finished that, if there's more deals I want to analyze, if there's more calls I need to do, if there's stuff here I can do on Pacific time, I'll do that. And then, 5, 6 o'clock is that.
I like that. Yeah, that's one good thing, because most people that I talk, they say, "Oh, start with the hard things." But I like with the easy stuff, you can kind of build up those wins, build up that momentum, where it's like, okay, I did a couple of stuff. It's kind of like in your system mentally, you're like, okay, I did a couple of things, and then you can kind of build up that momentum from there. So that's a really excellent tip. I like that a lot.
And I think it depends so much on you personally. I think that's the huge thing, right? Because it's good to listen to books, and you take what applies to you, right? There's never a one size fits all. And that's why I had a hard time for the longest time, because my brain is wired a little bit differently. And once I realized that, because I would be hard on myself. I was like, oh, why didn't I do this? Why haven't I done that? Blah, blah, blah. And I realized it was because my brain doesn't work like that. I'm not wired like that. And that was a prime example of trying to do the hard stuff first, and it just didn't work. So for anyone listening, just try and figure out what works best for you. It's not what someone says on a podcast or what you read. Yes, take that if it works, but if it doesn't, throw it away and find something that does work.
Exactly. Yeah, totally 100% there. And as far as any, I know you're interacting with contractors and brokers, a whole bunch of stuff out of a different state, different time zones. Any tools or resources that you use to make you more productive or help your job be more easier?
Yeah, definitely. Something I found for me as well, again, knowing how I'm wired. If I tell someone, hey, I'll call you tomorrow, usually doesn't happen. Something else will come up. I don't feel like calling. I'll put it off. But I always use Google Invite. I use the Google Calendar app. I set up a date and time. Hey, can we do 10 a.m. tomorrow? What time works for you? 10 a.m. tomorrow? Perfect. Send them out a Google Invite. It's in my calendar. There's no getting out of it. There's nothing else that's going to get in the way. At 10 a.m. tomorrow, I'm calling someone. I'm doing this. So the more I can schedule stuff like that as well, and again, just knowing who I am and how I work, the more it works. Because 9 times out of 10, if I say, hey, I'm going to call you tomorrow. So if anyone's listening to this and I say, hey, I'm going to call you tomorrow, don't expect a call from me, right? It's nothing personal. It's just so that I always say, and then they're like, oh, no, just call me tomorrow. I'm saying, what time? I don't know, between 1 and 3. I'm like, no, can we please set a time and date? Because then I'll stick to it. So that's been big for me as well, is just using that.
I'm the same exact thing. I have to have it there. If not, I'll and plus it frees up the brain, because you're doing so many things. Real estate's like a contact sport sometimes. So like things will pop up, you get a call and you may have to address it, or you doing, something may run long and you completely forgot. You forgot to eat lunch on time or whatever. And so if it's on your calendar, like, okay, I got this call in 15 minutes. Let me rush up, finish this meal. Let me finish up this call so I can be able to address the next task. So that's awesome. The same exact thing.
I don't know if you have the same thing as well. I assisted in my wife, and it took her kicking and screaming to do this, but to get her to sync her calendar, Google Calendar, with mine, and actually use, because she writes everything in an actual calendar. She writes everything down on paper, which is fine. It works for her. But like, if I have something next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and she's like, hey, well, I have something. Well, I'm like, I don't have your book. I don't look at your book, right? Just can you please, like, yes, keep writing in your book if that works for you, but please put it in your calendar. We'll sync calendars, and then I know, right, we're not going to clash because she's a real estate agent here in Vegas, and sometimes she had a showing at the same time as I had an interview. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And so she, you know, one of us had to cancel. So that was another thing I suggest, because it just makes everything easier to sync. If you have a spouse or a significant other, just sync your calendars together and persuade them to put, even if they meet someone for coffee, whatever it is, put everything in. It takes 30 seconds to schedule an event, and it makes a world of difference.
I do the exact same thing. Like, especially you're podcasting at home, you got the little ones, so you got to coordinate, you know, who's going to be with the baby and all that stuff. Because 100%, like me and you on the same mindset right there. It's just, that's a big important thing. If you have a spouse or a partner, make sure you sync the calendar so like you can, you know, work around it. And it just makes a better overall, you know, communications, you know, relationship too. Because not just with the spouse, but anyone you're dealing with. Like I do with like friends and stuff like that. Just not to make it too stringent, but like at least we know, so I can be able to do other things and be able to make sure I call them or address them whenever, you know, they need it on their time, to respect their time as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And then finally, I always ask, because you seem like a very deep person, family orientated, you know, very goal strident. Can you tell us about you know, gratitude? What are you most grateful for?
Yeah, I don't want to say some stupid stuff I'm grateful for, because there's nothing stupid, right? But you know, for me, and I fall in and out of doing this habit of showing gratitude, and I think it's so important, and I don't know why I fall out of it, but sometimes I do. But when I do, you know, I'm obviously thankful for I have an awesome wife. I have a beautiful 18-month-old son who's just crazy as anything. I have a really cool 5-pound Yorkie who's sleeping in the corner next to me over here. I love him to death. So obviously thankful for all of those things. But coming from Wales in the UK, right? I don't know how many people can relate to this. Maybe you can in New York right now, Connecticut right now with this weather, rough winters. I grew up so much rain, so much crappy weather, right? Not good weather. So now I'm in Vegas and I wake up every day, and 99 times out of 100, the sun is shining, the blue skies, and the trees look so green, and I just love going out and just looking at that and being thankful for the green trees, for the blue skies, for the yellow sun, right? I'm just so grateful for that. It just makes me so happy. Literally, just that alone, I don't need any fancy things. Just that alone makes me so happy, and just be able to look at that and enjoy it just makes such a big difference. And then something else, even though I haven't been working a year, I have an amazing job. I love real estate and I'm all about financial freedom, but working for Cirque du Soleil has been amazing. And the people that I work with, like going into work every day, right? The show is cool, performing, don't get me wrong, and, you know, putting smiles on people's faces and, you know, all that good stuff is great. But just going into work every day and having fun with my friends at work it was amazing. And I miss that. I miss so many of them, to be honest with you. But I'm so grateful for that, because so many people go to work and they hate their job, right? And I had a job where I had to be there 5 days a week, same day, same time, pretty much. And I didn't always enjoy that, the monotony of the same thing over and over. But in terms of the people I work with and just going around and messing around, because, you know, despite being a wrestler and, you know, being kind of serious at times, I love to mess around and be a kid and just joke around with my friends and just play tricks on each other, or just, you know, just have conversations. And man, I miss that, but I was so grateful for that. So those are some things that I'd like to show gratitude for.
Awesome. Yeah. And like I said, it was a pleasure having you on. It was a pleasure being on your show. Like I said, just a lot of fun. I love your energy and kind of like your goals, like-minded investor. And like I said, I know you're going to resonate with a lot of our audience and beyond, whoever listens to this podcast in the future. Really appreciate it. And then finally, we'll make sure to put all your information in the show notes, blast it out to our network so people can get in touch. But what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm on. I have the podcast called the WWRE Podcast. It's on the screen here if anyone's listening on the podcast. It's called the WWRE Podcast. Do a daily episode, interview people from all aspects of real estate. I have a multifamily focus, but I interview flippers, wholesalers, people that do the BRRRR method, people that do triple net leases, people that do mobile home parks, people that do self-storage, all of that good stuff. So go check that out if you're interested. And the next best place is if you go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com, because that's what WWRE Podcast stands for, wrestlingwithrealestate.com. And then if you go there, like as I mentioned, one of the hardest things for me starting out was analyzing deals and underwriting the deals, right? because the numbers tell you everything in multifamily, right? It tells you how much you pay, what kind of returns you're going to get, right? What kind of deal you're looking at, right? The numbers are so important. And I didn't fully understand the line items that go into the expenses and how you end up in the right deals and so on. So I put a video together with my friend, and it's on the website. So if you go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com, there'll be a pop-up and you can sign up for the free underwriting video. And hopefully it'll help some people not make the same mistakes that I did and learn, and increase that learning curve.
100%. Yeah, Barry, it was, like I said, it's a pleasure having you on, my friend. I look forward to speak with you soon. I know we text each other and stuff like that. We're going to stay in contact. Best to you and the family, your baby and your wife. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you, man.
All right. Take care, my friend.